to play chess online or learn how to improve? Join us at the #1 chess destination in the world, chess.com. With hundreds of thousands of people playing at any moment, you'll quickly find a game with someone at your level, whether you're a total beginner or a grandmaster. You can play games at any pace against friends, other members, or one of our many computer personalities. Chess.com makes improving fun and easy. Sharpen your game with tactics puzzles and enhance your strategy with our videos and lessons by top masters. Learn from your own games with Chess.com's easy-to-use analysis tool. Regardless of your skill level, Chess.com has all you need to take your game to the next level. Chess.com is your go-to source for chess news, live coverage of tournaments, events, and everything in between. Experience Chess.com anytime and anywhere, whether you're at home on your computer or on the go with our mobile apps. Signing up is free and easy, so what are you waiting for? Join Chess.com today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome at the finals of FIDE Grand Prix 2022 third leg. And I am honored to be hosting this show with International Master David Pruess. Welcome, David, at the finals.
Hey, Katie, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, so big day for these two players. Let's take a look how they got in here in the finals. We have Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura. Wesley beat Amin Tabatabai in tie breaks, big fight there. And Nakamura also beat Mamedyarov in tie breaks. Those games were amazing. And we were here yesterday looking at the rapid games, and seems like it was a day of Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura. David, today Wesley goes with white pieces, the first game. And what would you expect here in this game?
Yeah, I'm expecting Wesley to push pretty hard in this game. So I'm happy with the order of the colors. I'm glad Wesley has white first because we saw Hikaru very happy to go to tie breaks against Mamedyarov, I would say, in his strategy when he played white in game one in that match. I think the match will be more exciting in this direction with Wesley playing white first and hopefully winning. And then we get to see Hikaru play with white tomorrow in a must-win situation. I think that would be the most exciting direction for this particular match to unfold. So I'm happy about that.
Dramatic. That sounds dramatic. That we really want to have to see. David, we have here 150,000 euro prize fund, and as the qualifiers of the candidates tournament is already known now at this point, these players are playing for the biggest prize. First place will get 24,000 euro, and the second place runner-up will get 18,000 euro. And also, what's very important, David, the title, you will be entitled by the by the winning Grand Prix leg. Hikaru already has this title, and he can get second, or Wesley can get first title. That's also quite important for chess players to be entitled. David, we do have this voting system, and now we do have final game, just final game. So everyone, let's go to chess.com/events. Then navigate to the tournament, select a game, click vote, and guess the results. We do have 3 results for today, and just I can vote the player you support or you think that will win today, or maybe even draw. It's possible here, David. But what's very important, make sure that you do all these actions before 10 moves, and probably they will play rather fast this first move.
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder, Ketty. I went and voted. I'll keep my vote a secret. This is my personal secret. I did put in a vote. Did you vote?
No, I will do it on the break. That's when I usually do it.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I put in my vote there, and I'm looking forward to being wrong about my vote.
Oh, hold on. I know who you're voting, David. I know who you're voting. Wesley. Yeah. That's what you said. That is going to be more exciting to you to see the Hikaru in mastering situation.
That's my hope. Can I really win $600 of cash for my vote?
If you guess it correct, you can.
I frequently guess it correct. I have yet to win my $600 in cash, but I'm looking forward to it.
We're gonna see that. All right, now we're taking a very short break as the game's gonna start in a few minutes, but we will be right before the first move, so we will not miss that actions. And you guys, please don't go anywhere. We're starting right now. Welcome back, everyone. And this is FIDE Grand Prix 2022 finals. David, we had 3 Grand Prix tournaments. This is a third one. There will be no more Grand Prix this year. And we have here 2 players. Very interesting situation. Hikaru Nakamura, who already qualified at the candidates tournament just by qualifying to the semifinals, and Wesley So, who has not a chance to qualify at the candidates tournament. He's in the final. He's still fighting for the title. But what do you think? What is his feeling for now, as he is doing his best for now at this tournament, but still there's not a chance for him to get at the candidates tournament?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question and a good thing to try to imagine, Ketty, because you talked about the 150,000 euros, but Hikaru's already run off with the main important prize, which is the spot in the candidates. I think Wesley and Hikaru, they each have enough money to live probably at this point in their careers. So it's much more interesting for them to try to become world champion than to win another few thousand euros, even if it sounds like a lot of money to us to win that. And for Wesley, it was really close. I mean, the reason that he doesn't have the spot is basically his tiebreak with Dominguez, right? If he had won the tiebreaker with Dominguez, it would probably still be up in the air. Like if he beats Hikaru, he gets the spot. If he loses to Hikaru, Hikaru gets the spot. I mean, who knows? They might have even faced each other already in the first Grand Prix knockout phase. So yeah, I mean, that's a big thing that he lost and left behind there. But as we were talking during the break, there is another path into the candidates. And I don't know if Wesley's thinking about it or not, but if I were him, that's probably what I would be thinking about, because I would be trying to keep that focus and motivation for myself. And so I'd be thinking about that rating spot, which everybody's talking about, Ding's 30 games in April that he's trying to play. But there is this spot right now, which is technically not decided here, right? Question mark head, highest FIDE rated player on the May FIDE list. And right now, the highest rated player would be Ding, but he needs 30 games to get there. And will he or won't he finish playing those games? One doesn't know for sure. If not, next up would be Aronian and Wesley. And Wesley is 6 points behind Levon. So one thing that Wesley could try to do in the month of April is pass Levon Aronian. He would need to beat Hikaru 2-0 here to do that. But they also have a tournament altogether coming up, an incredible tournament, the America's Cup. Right? And that's going to be something like April 20th to 30th, something like that. And there, Wesley will have a chance to play not only against Hikaru again, but against Levon. And I think a reasonable goal for Wesley this month could be to try to finish the month ahead of Levon on rating. I see people in chat saying Ding is surely going to get the games. Of course, he's going to get the games. But you never know. And what you need to focus on is what you can control. And I guess for some of us, what we can control is what we say in chats and what we tweet. But for Wesley, he can control, his rating and his results here and whether or not he ends up the month ahead of or behind Levon. And I think that's what he needs to focus on here probably. And even if I'm wrong, it's probably good for him to focus on it, even if that's not important.
That's a very good point, David. Maybe Wesley has no chance to qualify from the Grand Prix, which is clear. It's already taken by Hikaru and Robert, but there is still one spot. And yeah, Ding said that he's going to play all these 26 rated players. He is on the way. He played now. I can see that he already played 10 games and has pretty nice results, 8.5 out of these 10 games. He's working. He's doing. It's not that he have already achieved this. He has to work. But then the question is how he has to play more games, even more games. And it happened before. He was supposed to play at the Grand Prix, but he couldn't make it because of the visa and the COVID restrictions. So no one knows what happens in the future. And if something happens, then you should be there. You should be first there. And that's what Wesley can aiming to do at this turn, starting from these finals, and then later, as you mentioned, he will have more games to play. So there is still some chance for him, as I understood.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, he could go set up some private matches with friends of his for the next 15 to 20 days while waiting for the America's Cup to start. He could try and log a bunch of games, see if he can gain 30 rating points. What else are you going to do this month but race with Ding and Levon?
Yeah, that could go this crazy. And David, so we received here the first moves, and we can see that we do have Nimzowitsch with Queen C2. Let's take a look at the game and try to predict how it can continue next.
Yeah. So I would say Wesley's style is a pretty universal style, but we do see him almost always starting his games with 1d4. Some players with universal styles will mix up the move orders a lot. It's very, very common these days. Wesley mostly goes with d4. And Hikaru here playing one of the best openings in chess, right? The Nimzo Indian defense. But one thing we've got to say is that Wesley is a huge expert on the Nimzo. He plays this with black a lot. He's extremely hard to beat in this opening. And at some point today, depending on how fast the players play, we might want to toggle over for a second and check out how Amin played against him, against Wesley's Nimzo just a couple days ago, because I had not seen Wesley lose with the Nimzo Indian for a long time. And that was part of the shock of that match to me was, you know, especially a lower rated player. I mean, it's real. I mean, how do you beat Wesley's Nimzo Indian? So I'm interested to see what he chooses to play against the Nimzo himself, given what an expert he is on it. And what he's chosen to do here, first of all, is play Queen C2, the classical variation, which happens to also be what Hikaru has played as white earlier in this same tournament here. So they're in the middle of heading into an opening that they both know quite well. And I imagine we can see a fair amount of preparation, even though you'll notice that they're playing very, very slowly so far, these first couple moves.
Yeah, from at this moment when Black castled on the short side, then White is taking some times. And here there are a lot of possibilities, a lot of theoretical continuation, starting with A3. You just don't wait for this Black to make decision how to continue the game, and you're just asking right away, if you take my knight, take it now, or just go back. Another move what White can do is knight to F3, just to continue development on the king side as well. The move that I like very much is E4. It's one of the main line to try to get the center, but then Black can answer D5. And this game is so crazy. It's so complicated starting from the beginning. Another continuation, David, is bishop to G5 to pin this knight and then try to push E4 in the center. Or you can also play bishop D2. But I'm not sure if Wesley is going to play now after Queen C2, which already guards the knight on C3. If he gonna play bishop D2, it's a bit passive and the knight is already guarded. So, and the last one is E3. You just ignore everything, try to develop your bishop on D3, knight to E2, castle, and then slowly try to get the center. So these are the continuation of White in here. And maybe that is the reason why Wesley is just thinking he probably was expecting Hikaru to play King's Indian, as he used to play in some of other games in this tournament. And for now, he wants to decide which is the setup he wants to play today.
Yeah. Yeah, of all those moves, I think bishop d2 is a little bit unlikely because the point of queen c2, as you said, is already to recapture without doubling pawns. So a3 would be the most classical choice within the classical, like the main reason for queen c2. But I'm pretty sure that a3 is what Hikaru played himself a couple days ago. So Wesley might want to play a different line than the line Hikaru played. He could go e4, which is a bit sharper, but then if Hikaru is well prepared, it can be more forcing and give you less room. He does.
We have e4, David. Let's go. It's going to be sharp. If Hikaru goes with d5 now and white responds e5, knight e4, that's what we want to see today. There we go. d5 is on the board. Okay,
so it's going to get into some sharp opening theory. I assume they're both going to know a lot more than me, so I won't know if their moves are good or bad. One interesting thing here, Ketty.
They are playing very fast. Bishop d3. All of these are the theory, but I think we lost.
As you can see that although they played the first couple moves a little bit slowly, it was.
We lost you for a second, David.
Sorry. It's unfortunate. I'm having some instability today. I'm sorry about that. Very sorry.
I've been there myself. All right. So
what I wanted to ask you. What I wanted to ask you was about the time usage. You know, they're playing the opening not super fast, but in particular, it's Wesley who's spending a lot more time than Hikaru. And what does that tell you about you know this battle right now in the opening?
Wesley wants to be a bit careful, and I think he was expecting something else maybe. And now also white has many choices and black doesn't have too much of choices usually. For instance, now white can play bishop f4 and guard e5 pawn, and white can also play knight to f3. So there are these two moves, and you always want to take some of your time to figure it out. For now, the knight on e4 is hanging, and you don't want to take this knight by the bishop because that's actually not even worth it to do it. And then queen takes knight c5 can come with attacking the queen, and yeah, it's just not the good position. But what Hikaru does now, look at this board that we have, live boards just below my video, says queen to h4. He is going to take the bishop on f3, attack the bishop, and g3 is only move there, David, to guard this bishop and the f2 pawn, and queen to h5. Yeah, Hikaru is well prepared for this game. He's blitzing out all the moves.
Yeah, and we see Hikaru's time going up. So not only does he know this, but he's probably feeling confident in his knowledge, right? Like he's probably not second guessing or worrying what has Wesley got prepared. He's probably feeling like he's really ready for whatever comes up in this particular opening.
Yeah, that's right. At this point, after queen h5, this is still the theory. White can play 6-7 more moves here, starting from castle or h4. So you're not really afraid to bring your king on the side, because black's play is not that easy on the king side. Another opportunity now is that you can also take the knight on e4 and try to just claim that I have extra pawn in the center. Queen takes, bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, and this position just to play.
Yeah.
For me, it's a little bit unpleasant to play with white, because at the moment, if bishop gets on h1 to a8 diagonal, white king will suffer.
Yeah, I'd be very, very scared. But I could imagine looking at this variation because at the moment you can't really see how that bishop does get to the diagonal because the white queen controls it. So I could see trying to use this variation here to, win a pawn and put some pressure on black. Maybe what black should do if white did this is just trade on c3 to compromise white's pawn structure. Because if you look where white has an extra pawn, it's on the queen side. If you take on c3, it's really not obvious how white would ever make use of that extra pawn to make a passed pawn or any other kind of positional progress. And then you also have opposite colored bishops to fall back on if you need to draw an endgame. And in a middle game, they're going to give black a lot of counterplay as well. So it feels like a position like this, black doesn't have a huge risk of losing in the middle game or the end game. If they trade on c3, I would feel pretty safe for black here.
Yeah, I like this position for black. To knight can come on c5, then can try to push b6, bishop b7 there, and these pawns is one thing, but the bishop on f4 is another thing that is just wrongly placed and hard to find the best square for this bishop. There is this line, David, and I was just trying to double check it. I can just tell you these moves.
Sure.
White can castle here. That's the move, the mostly played move here in this position, and black goes g5.
Yeah.
Using this fact, the bishop is wrongly placed. If you play bishop to e3, what black can do is to push more pawns on the king side, or even to play g4, knight g5, and then knight will get a very nice square on the king side. So basically the things get crazy after g5, and white plays c takes d5, one of the main line there.
Oh, not bishop e3.
Bishop e3 is also a possibility.
Okay.
But c takes d5 leads us to madness. So black takes now the bishop.
No, okay.
You can take also this pawn, but I think knight d5, then too many things are hanging.
Oh, knight d5. Yeah. Yes. Okay, good point. So, because my natural instinct is I want to let this bishop out, right? But I forgot for a second after knight d5, this whole structure falls apart. So if you wanted to play e takes d5 for black in this position, you would have to start with bishop c3, I'm pretty sure. And then if white took here, then this kind of a position should be playable-ish for black, but you also have to worry about bishop takes knight, some crazy stuff like that. Okay, so tell me your variation. So you're saying after c takes d5, we can take the bishop. F4. Sure, it's possible.
And now you think that white will take this knight on e4, but no, white usually takes the pawn on e6.
What?
First.
Why?
I don't know. It's just crazy line. Well, then you can do this other way too.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so white takes here. It's just chaos. Knight e5 maybe, and then white gets the piece back.
I can show you this line. Maybe bishop e4 is possible, but then instead of d takes e6, bishop e4. But now knight jumps on e5.
Okay, it's good.
And very likely black wants to push f3 and then get this f5 next move, queen h3 and queen g2 checkmate.
Block white's bishop out and then checkmate.
Yeah, and this is all the computer lines, David, here is just madness going on. So to avoid this, black first takes the pawn on e6. And here, as you mentioned, there is knight e5 move, there is knight c3 move, and there is also bishop c3 move. So in case of bishop c3, you take d7 knight there and keep this knight on the board, hanging, bishop hanging, and another bishop hanging. So this is a crazy line in here. But the main variation is knight to take on c3. So you just trade this knight which is hanging.
Okay, so after d6, knight c3.
Yes, knight c3.
Yeah.
Now e takes d7.
d7 still.
And bishop d7. The bishop is now developed. That's what you wanted. And after b takes c3, rook to c8 to pin this pawn. And the bishop on b4 is not hanging. And now white can play bishop to f5. So this can go all the way to the end game after bishop f5. If you take the bishop on f5, then knight comes on f5, and white claims that white is just fine in there.
Like this?
Yes, bishop takes f5.
Wow.
Yeah. You can also take by queen there.
Okay, so these lines suddenly triggered my memory. These positions here were looking really familiar. And I just looked it up, and this is the opening from Jeffrey Xiong against Wesley So from the US Championships last year. So Wesley had the black side of this opening, and Jeffrey managed to put a little bit of pressure on him in a very similar line to this. Bishop e3. He played, and then knight e5. f3, knight c5. No, with cd5 in, sorry. So g5. Here, he played cd5 like you said. cd5, bishop c3, bc3, ed5, bishop e3, knight e5, f3, knight c5, bishop f5. So this position here, Wesley had recently with black.
That's interesting.
So he's got plenty of knowledge of the position.
He knows what Hikaru is going to play.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he's 20 minutes down thinking through, where can he find something that he doesn't think Hikaru is going to know, right? It's not that he doesn't know what could be done here. He's trying to think, is there something that Hikaru doesn't know can be done here?
Right. That's what he's thinking. He's just remembering all these lines. And I should admit, this is one of the lines that it was very hard for me to study and to remember. And we do have here short castle, so very likely we're going to see g5 played by Hikaru. Next move. And David, then I had this game twice in my games over the board games, and it was easier when I had pieces on the board rather than when I was working, because then you think different way. You remember something, you remember some ideas, and rest you're coming up on the board, and it's not that hard anymore. But when I was working these lines with the computer and with the coach, I was thinking it was too hard to remember, too hard to play, and too bad to play, because if you miss one move, if you make one wrong move, you are lost. And it's true. But the thing is that it's so logical, your moves are so logical, you are not really losing right away in 10 moves or 20 moves.
That's interesting. So when you were studying this line, it felt really hard. Then when you actually played it, it was okay.
Yeah, it was true. And for me, it was quite nice to play by white. Had a nice result. G5 is on the board.
All right. And Wesley takes on D5 quickly.
Bishop takes C3.
So I imagine that Hikaru actually knows the game between Jeffrey and Wesley, because Hikaru was playing at the US Championships, and I imagine while he plays there, he at least checks out the games of the other 2,700 plus players, right? So I'm sure he checks how Wesley and Fabi and are doing every time, and Levon and Linear. So
I'm sure with that they always do it. All the top grandmasters, they not only check their own games but also the other games. They constantly know what is going on, and this is very interesting, David, because just to play so long games and so intense games takes a lot of time and energy from you, and then they have energy to analyze others games, not only just look, analyze them and find some problems in the others games. I don't know, are they also having 24 hours like we do?
oh
They have double time in their daily routine.
One way to double your time is to have a second who analyzes some of these things for you, and runs the computer for you and tells you what the computer saw. If you have 2 seconds, you could almost triple your time. So that may be one of the differences between them and us.
True. That's a very good point. And when second checks this, and it gives you only game which is important, which is news, which is maybe bad even, so and you're updated. And that can be told during the dinner, during, I don't know, a phone call. Just imagine you have second, and then you have this little time, gossiping time, and talking about some news in chess and some games. That's a very good idea.
Yeah. Wesley continuing to burn up the time, and Hikaru just still adding time here the last several moves. So he's very comfortable. They are still following that Jeffrey Xiong versus Wesley So game at this point. They're still in that game. Bishop f5 is what Jeffrey played. And we'll see if this is where Wesley, comes up with some different move. But that game went bishop f5 and then knight from c5 back to e6. A surprising move, because you'd think you'd be happy to trade your one undeveloped piece. But I guess, bishop f5, he can't afford white's knight to come to f5 just yet with the weakened king position. So bishop f5, knight e6, that was that game. We'll see how long they continue to follow it. But based on the speed of Hikaru's last few moves, I'm 100% confident. Before I would say 95%, 96% chance he knows that game. But now I would say 100% if you look at the speed of his moves.
David, I saw now there are some of the games in this position after knight c5, and I can see that Shahriar Mammadiyarov played twice against very strong opponents like David Navarra, and this can lead us to the draw in 30 moves.
Okay.
So I can show that very quickly. After bishop f5, which also was in the Wesley's previous game. After bishop f5, here black goes knight to e6. And after rook to e1, a to e1, we have knight d4 trade.
Now there's no knight to come to f5.
Yeah, you might think now bishop will come here on the big diagonal, and the black squares on the king side are weak. That's true, but there is some moves that black can play here. For instance, knight to c6. Straightforward attack in this bishop on d4, bishop c5, hitting the rook. And now it's time to take the bishop on f5 and connect the rooks. After queen takes f5, rook f to e8.
Yeah.
And now we have draw in few moves in both games. Rook takes rook, another takes, a takes now, and queen to d7, going after a rook and also pawn. So if you go somewhere passive, then white will take those pawns. So here black has to play rook to e2, attacking h2 pawn, and there is a checkmate in next move. And now we do have a checks on the back rank, queen c8 check, king g7 and queen f8. And now after king g6, there's queen g8 and king, it's just repetition, yes. King f6 and queen h8.
Yeah, that makes sense. the activation of that rook to e2, sort of holding the balance for black in this particular variation. One thing to realize when you look at these positions, something important for evaluating them is to bear in mind that black is up a pawn. Because at first I was looking at this and I was like, these games all ended in draws. Why is that? Black's king looks a bit weakened. White's rook is first to this open file. The dark squared bishop is great, but if you trade it, then you're allowing rook e7. So just first blush, looking at only the pieces, it felt like white would have to be better, you know, maybe even a full pawn better off of the potential of the rook on the e file. But then when you count that white's down a pawn, it makes more sense.
Yeah, it's a good counter play for white for the pawn, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So okay, so that was a Mamedyarov game. Let's go back to where they are at the moment. You can see everybody, Wesley thinking again, almost 30 minutes off the clock. And if anybody wonders, why do grandmasters over 2,700 have a 75% draw rate in games against each other? Today, we're seeing one reason for it. I'm not calling the game a draw. I'm just saying, if you look at this, the amount of danger that Hikaru is in general, like black's in more danger than white at this level, right? I mean, they don't lose that often with white, right? So let's look at the danger Hikaru's in. First of all, he's already played 16 moves that he knows by heart that are sort of, you know, computer checked and sure to be okay. Also, it didn't cost him any time or energy yet. He's got 5 more minutes than he started with. He's got all the resources he needs to play this game, right? He might only have to make, depending how much more he knows, but if he knows another 5 moves, he might only need to find 1 or 2 good moves to draw the game, let's say, right? Only like 1 or 2 sort of key decisions that he'll have to think about. And one of the things about the mistakes that top players make is they often come as a result of, you know, pressure and playing a game for a while. It's not like they just randomly make mistakes. If you just give them 2 puzzles to solve, they always get 1 out of 2 wrong. It's more like if you give them 17 difficult puzzles in a row within an hour and a half, they'll sometimes get 1 of them wrong.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
So 2 more moves played following that game. Still speedy and confident.
This 96 for me was a little bit unnatural move because black's pieces are not developed, and I was like, why knight to e2? Why I want to do this? And I was thinking, how about bishop to f5? But if you take this bishop to f5 and you try to develop your piece and trade with very good piece, the knight comes to f5. The knight on c5 is under attack. You cannot play rook c8 because knight e7 is a fork. You have to move this knight away, and then bishop d4 is the move that you have to watch out. Rook e1 is the move that you can watch out. And also in some variations, also in the game of Jeffrey John and so Wesley So was f4, very, very interesting move. So you can make a combination of that, starting with bishop g5, queen takes g5, and then f4 to fork queen and knight, and just to open up black's king even more.
Yeah. So if you trade on f5, it turns out you still need to waste a tempo on this knight. The good thing is you got this bishop out of the way of your rooks. The bad thing is you put the knight on f5, which is an amazing square. So it's kind of a question, which is more important? I think part of the problem might be that white could also follow with g4, and this queen would be weirdly placed because the knight's kind of controlling a lot of the squares the queen wants to go to, and indirectly g6 because of knight e7, right? So we probably end up playing knight e6 anyway here, like in the game without the bishop trade, because the knight's attacked. And as you said, rook c8 doesn't work. And now I would be worried that after G4. I think the only square for the queen is H3. And that's a pretty committed, weird spot for her.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Black's really gonna have to fight to make that work out.
You can just need to watch out for F3 pawn, and
yeah,
when you discard this pawn, then you can claim for advantage here in this position.
Yeah. So maybe like check here and here, defending this pawn and attacking these things. And if F6, I'm going to assume we can get away with taking that knight.
It's a very good position. Yes, they're making these weird looking moves.
Okay, let's see the weird looking moves. So knight E6 was played, and now rook A to E1. And this is still following the Mamedyarov game you mentioned, which was knight D4, bishop D4, knight C6.
Right.
Let's see. Let me go check if Jeffrey played rook E1 here. Yes.
They had Fs. Yeah, it was the same.
Yeah, Jeffrey also played rook E1 here against Wesley. And Hikaru's finally thinking a little bit after a lot of quick moves.
Right. It's gonna be interesting which game they gonna follow from now.
Mm-hmm. Logically speaking, white is sort of threatening. Okay, there's the move. I was going to say, logically speaking, there's not a lot of choices for black in this position, I think, because the white rook on E1, I think white's sort of threatening to take on G5 and play rook E5, which I think would be a little bit unpleasant for black. White wins back their pawn and still has that, pretty aggressively placed pieces and weaknesses in the black king side. So I was feeling like black needs to do something about this knight. I wouldn't want to bring the knight away from the king side. So I don't like knight C4, even though in some other position it could be good. So I wasn't seeing a lot of moves I would play for black other than trading a knight C6. And after a minute or two of thought, Hikaru did make the trade and play knight C6. And Wesley did play F4. So that is the move of Jeffrey against Wesley.
Yeah, he went to I don't know how he feels about this, but David, very often we don't feel good when we have to play just like our opponent used to play against us. And you have to repeat this. You have to repeat your previous game, but color reverse. This is just a weird situation.
Yeah, so sometimes it is really weird if you prefer one side or sort of know one side better. But I think these players, and I definitely consider Wesley and Hikaru to be among these players. I think these top players now who are so versatile, and one of the things about how they understand these positions is they do understand them from both sides. They do sort of see the pluses and minuses. They see their opponent's perspective as well as their own when they're playing. That's a big difference with a lot of more amateur players who sort of like see their plans and don't really know what the opponent's going to do. And so I think it's actually easier for them to, I think it's not as hard for them to play both sides of the same opening, because I think they really do sort of like see like, well, this is what white's going for, this is black's counterplay, and so forth.
That's a very good point to know the openings from both sides, to know the moves and also to know the ideas from both sides. They have played a lot of games, like tons and tons of games, as I can see, and now I can tell you the result. It's hard to define who is the leader. They have made 16 16 draws in classical chess. So they have played a lot of games. I can say that Wesley beat it 3 times in classical chess, and Hikaru beat 1 time. So there's bit of edge here for Wesley. So this can be the reason why Hikaru chose this opening, why he chose this line, and why he follows his old game. Maybe he's very comfortable to get into the rapid portion, where now in that case already Hikaru beats with bigger number of the games, but still they have, in rapid chess they have 63 draws. It's just too much. Can you imagine?
63 draws to 3 decisive results.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. Well, we'll see more of how this game develops. We finally got Hikaru thinking, and we are going to go take a short break, folks. There will be occasional short breaks. That's part of how it all works. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a couple minutes to continue covering this FIDE Grand Prix final between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura.
Rapid Chess Championship is a brand new world-class online rapid event series for the top 100 players, top 10 women, top 10 junior in the world. Watch as the very best compete for their share of $20,000 each week, culminating with $150,000 prize in the finals in late August. And this event gonna start in just a few hours, so stay tuned. But before that, let's watch once again the game between Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura, because this game might end in a draw, David, but we learned a lot of interesting ideas in this opening, and still a lot is ahead of us, because this is not yet end of this line, and it can just continue further. So we had earlier this game of Shahir Mamedyarov and David Navara, which ended in a funny way, with repetition and a draw. But they are still keeping this game of Jeffrey and Wesley.
Exactly. So if I go back here, this is where it deviated. In this position here, the Mamedyarov-Navara game went bishop c5, keeping the bishop versus knight imbalance. But that tempo that white spent on preserving the bishop, black used it to counter the e file. Okay, so, you know, you spend a tempo, your opponent gets a chance to do something useful with that tempo. Black did. That game ended in a draw. F4 as played here in our current game. This move in my database has only ever been played in the Xiong versus So game that I was referencing from the 2021 US Championships. And in that game, there was a slightly different move order. So here, Hikaru took on d4. They could still transpose to that game, but I'll just show you that in that game, the move order was gf4, rook f4, then knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, bishop f5, rook f5. That's how Wesley handled this as black. And if I go back to where we are now with knight d4, cd4, you can see that there's a good chance after gf4, rook f4, bishop f5 could transpose to the exact same position. And if Hikaru plays g takes f4 here, I don't see any really likely move for white here other than rook f4, because trading on c8 and bringing out the black rook to tempo your queen and giving black time to take on g3, I don't see what would be attractive to white about doing that. It's more likely, in general in chess, you don't want to be the one capturing and letting your opponent improve their pieces when they recapture. You more often want to be sort of recapturing, and if they're trading your stuff off, at least you're always recapturing and putting a new piece on a good square. Right. And then, maybe queen g6, rook e5 or something like that. So if I go back here, I feel like there's still a very high chance that they transpose to that game. But we do notice at least that Hikaru is having to think at this point in the game. Is he still familiar with the position? Maybe, but it's close enough to the limit of what he knows that it's time for him to double check and start making some decisions.
That's a good point. For now, we're about on move 20. And just imagine, all the openings up to 20 moves. You have a lot of advantages in your chess career, indeed. Yeah. David, I was thinking why Hikaru first took the bishop on d4 and why Wesley took the first pawn on f4. And I think in this case, after g takes f4, white can still keep the dark square bishop on the board. Maybe it's not the best, but can do it. So Hikaru wants to play very clean way. He wants to go to this end game without.
Although with this bishop hanging, I don't know. With the bishop hanging, I don't know if there was an alternative for white here other than gf4 either.
Bishop takes c8 might be possible. Okay. So if you take with the rook, I can move my bishop away. Maybe knight d4 has to be played now. Yep. And queen can go to d2, and then queen can take this knight on d4 next move.
But after knight f3, instead of rook c8, black's going to come out ahead.
Yeah, maybe knight f2 is queen f2 is the better way to avoid this. But I'm not claiming this is any bad for black. It can be. It cannot be big difference, but he just wanted to go
right. And then you're saying if here you could put your queen on this diagonal instead of the pawn. Still, we didn't keep bishops on, and I don't know about allowing black to take apart some more of white's king cover. I'm not sure that there is a more precise choice between these two captures. Maybe Hikaru didn't remember for sure which way Wesley had taken in that game, and then he was trying to calculate, and he's like, the two moves look the same. Sometimes you're trying to figure out what's the difference between the two moves, and the hardest time to figure it out is when there is no difference, because what you'll see is after knight d4, cd4, gf4, rook f4, this is the game now, right? Bishop f5, rook f5, they reached exactly the same position as the other game. So
I really don't see there any difference. You just transpose there, in the same
queen
line,
h6, and you'll see that Wesley. I claimed earlier that although Wesley was spending 10, 20, 30 minutes thinking, that it was not because he didn't know what was going on. It was because he knew so much, and he was trying to figure out, like, is there something that Hikaru might not know? What variation should I pick? Because he's played this move instantly. Obviously, he still knows the position here at move 24 intimately. So he was just looking around at his options. And this is also still the move that Jeffrey played against him.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, that he was not struggling to find the moves, but he was just considering his options, and still he has one hour on the clock. But to be honest, David, we know this game has been played and it was a draw. We know it, but to look to this position, we have quite complicated situation. Black's
Super
king
complicated.
is open, there's no G pawn. White king is neither safe. This king can be under some checks. And we do have queens and the rooks on the board, heavy pieces on the board.
Yeah.
And d5 pawn is hanging, b7 pawn is hanging. To my eyes, also, this queen c7 move is a little bit like too deep, because d5 pawn was simply hanging. And instead of taking this d5 pawn, which is for me, for most of our viewers, I think that's a automatic move that we play. This pawn is hanging, central pawn is hanging. You don't blunder anything, go for it. But then we have this fancy move, queen to c7, and this is heavy. Just analyze this in still at this point, and the main reason of queen c7 is that I think you want to put black into some confusion. b7 pawn is also hanging, and if you guard this b7 pawn, maybe white wants to then start to play on f7 pawn, and definitely that's the better pawn you want to have off the board. Then black's king will be even weaker. And then black goes to rook to c8. He just ignores everything. b7 pawn is hanging, and white says, like, I don't take any of your pawns. I am going for queen e5, and now rook g5 wins a queen. So this is a serious threat for black.
And they've played two more moves, rook c8, queen e5, still following Wesley's game against Jeffrey. And, rook g5 is a huge threat here. So black doesn't have a lot of good moves available right here. One thing I want to say is, if you and I knew the position at move 20 in all our games, you mentioned that would be a big advantage, right? I mean, I think if we knew 20 moves like this of every game and some idea of like what the resulting position is like, it really, I mean, you could see us drawing 70% of our games instead of losing so much. So I think it's huge. And I remember when I watched the game between Jeffrey and Wesley, I was thinking that black was in huge trouble. If you didn't know this opening theory and you were just seeing this position, would you imagine that it's scary for black here, this position?
Yes, if I don't know, if I just watched this game without knowing that the game has been played, I would be like, oh, whoa, what's going on? Rook g5 now wins a queen. Black has to play f6. This is such a bad move. It becomes a king. And then d5 is under check. I would be like this. But now knowing the game, know what's the black's moves too, I think it's just okay to play with both sides.
So I remember being really, really impressed with how Wesley drew this game. F6 has just been played by Hikaru, by the way, just like Wesley played before, this crazy move, hanging the d5 pawn with check. So he's still following, they are still following that game up through king h8. And I remember being really excited, like, oh my goodness, Jeffrey is going to like win a game against Wesley, or has really good chances to win a game against Wesley. And I was terrified for black. And when Wesley drew that game, I was so impressed. I was like, oh my goodness, he's so good. How can you draw like this? But the thing is, the first time you draw a game like this, yeah, it's amazing. You have to be so good, right? But if you know the first 25 moves, the difficulty level goes down for Hikaru here, right? Because number one, he knows there's a draw. That's helpful for finding the draw. If you know that the balance can be held, if you know some of the ideas from seeing the previous game, And if he has to find 2 or 3 hard moves in a single game, that's not going to be enough to get a mistake out of Hikaru. He will solve them. It'll look like he's a genius, but actually the difficulty level was just not high enough to really like push him when he knows that much about the position and only has to solve a couple questions instead of 20 questions.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. David, we have now King H8, and in the game that has been played between Jeffrey and Wesley, Rook F2 was a move there to avoid Black's move Rook C2. So you don't want this Rook to get activate and attack your H2 weakness. So Rook F2 is the move maybe Wesley is now thinking to play. And after Rook F2, he played himself Rook to C1 and tried to trade another Rook of White. Before we go to that line, we have very interesting suggestion in the comment section in the chat. Rook C6 move instead of F6. F6 looks the move that you weaken your king and drop the pawn. Rook C6 looks more natural. If you play Rook G5, I will cover it. But I very quickly checked that with a computer, as everybody checks with a computer. I'll do that too. And after Rook C6 here, White goes to Rook E to F1. So here White has, Black has some options, and Black has to be a bit careful. If you just make some moves here, I don't know, A6 or some waiting moves, you might fall for Rook H5, Rook F6 moves. You have to be just very careful. But there's a
queen
move...
can never go here. She can't go here. I guess she could maybe go to G7 because then the rook can still block on G6.
Yeah, that's a possibility. So instead of A6, it's just a move that we randomly play here. Rook E6 is Black's choice here to target the queen. And now what White can do is to give a check on G5. Black has to cover this check, and now to go Rook H5. So you win a little bit of time here with this move. And after Queen to G7, you can take D5 pawn. And in some of the computer lines, then F1 Rook also gets somewhere on the 4th or 5th rank. And if you don't play accurate moves here, you can get a little bit worse position with Black.
Oh, Wesley has played a different move than Jeffrey. Let's check out the live move. Well, before I switch to the live position, which people can also see in the view here below, Ketty, I'll just say this position, Ketty, that you just showed us is a scenario that's good for White, I think, right? Because the Black pieces are still passive while White has recovered their pawn. The rook on G6 is not getting to C1 or C2, which is kind of a main defensive resource that Wesley showed in his game with Black here against Jeffrey. So this position, White can keep the tension, bring the rook to F5, pressure F7, maybe advance the D pawn. This is still a lot of scariness for Black in this kind of scenario here. So that was the choice of rook E6 in this position versus F6 as played by both Hikaru and Wesley previously. So check here. And in this position, instead of the fancier move rook F2 preventing rook C2, we've got just queen takes B7 played by Wesley. And we immediately have to ask ourselves, what about rook C2 for Hikaru here? Because that's presumably the move Wesley was trying to prevent in that other game.
Rook C2 is on the board.
Hikaru's played it pretty quickly. I would think if he were scared, whenever he gets scared in this game, if there ever comes a moment when he's scared, I would expect, a 15, 20 minute think on the first key move he gets, because there's only going to be a couple of them. But he played rook C2 quickly. And did White have anything other than rook F2 here, or is this just kind of a forcing move?
You don't want to play f4. This is just weakens g3 pawn then, and queen d2 comes, and you can stop queen f2, queen h2. Sorry, queen h2 move right away. So rook f2 was pretty much forced. But
rook f2 is pretty much forced here.
Yeah, you don't really solve your king's problem. Now black can take this, and queen h2 can be captured by black.
Okay, so this doesn't look very scary for black to me. Oh, this is done. No. This is done. Dina, go do your interview.
Hurry up.
I'm sorry, queen g2. I mean, this is done. Wesley had no ammo left here, or what? Hikaru?
He goes forward, queen h5. He says your king is weaker than mine, and you have d4 pawn, and I'm going for that.
That's incredible. Oh no, draw agreed. Okay, we got a little whiplash there. It was like, if you wanted to draw, you just play queen g2, right? It's a dead rook and pawn ending. But he played queen h5 and then offered a draw, just saying like there's no danger in any move. It doesn't matter what I play. That's the way.
Yeah. But David, if he takes first queen on g2, king g2, and you will get this, you might get this rook on d1, and this rook will support the pawn, then king will come on f3, f4. Maybe he doesn't want this complication. He wanted draw. He made queen h5, and that's move 30. And according to the rules we have at the Grand Prix, you can offer a draw. And he knew that Wesley will not decline that draw. So
right.
Yeah, he went for this. I was so curious to see what was the better move than queen b7. Is obviously not the improvements from the of the other game, and that's very interesting line there. Maybe we can take a look. Instead of queen b7, we saw rook f2, rook c1, rook trade in the other game. But instead of this, white can go rook e2 first.
That's what I was wondering about before as well. Yeah,
you want to play rook e to f2, king g2, and start to target f6 pawn. And after this one, black now can go for queen to h3, and the threat is rook c1.
That's a smart move. Yikes. Yeah.
White has to play now rook f1 to guard the first rank. Then he wants to play rook e to f2 anyways.
That's funny.
This kind
of the previous game he played with rooks on e1 and f2, and now you play like this. But because you had to play your clever queen h3 move, at least there's not an immediate rook trade on c1.
That's right. So after rook f1, now what black can do is to play queen to g4, attack your e2 rook. And as we said earlier, we want to get this rook on f-file. So white goes to rook f2. And now queen g4 targets d4 pawn. So rook c to d8 hits the queen and the pawn at the same time. So this is still just fine position for black.
That looks really fine for black. That's, queen g4 is sneaky. Maybe on queen g4, you might want to play rook e4 to guard this pawn in advance. And then Ketty, you're probably coming here trying to threaten rook c2 again, make me go back and defend.
Yeah, why not? Rook c2, it's a serious threat. You have to avoid that.
Oh, except we have rook h4, keeping everything defended. Send her somewhere back. Wait, where does it even send her? Oops.
It's draw. Oh, Dave.
I found a way to blunder, Ketty. I found a way.
One.
I don't know what I did with your queen. Sorry. Well, in that case, rook e4 is a really strong looking move because we're finally going to get this annoying queen out of white's face, right? I mean, she might have to go back somewhere more defensive like g6 or g7.
G7, yes.
G7. And then maybe white's got time to go after this pawn, right? Rook e6 or rook f4.
With both of these moves, black is still fine because black can play rook d8 and then f5 and start to attack the pawn on d4. And this pawn will be captured by the check.
Yeah. Okay. So you're still not worried for black here, but it's a little worrisome. In a game, it's still a little worrisome. I mean, black's fighting.
I have
for
engine open here. That's why.
Oh, you have the engine open, so you're not scared of anything. Good luck, David. Good luck. I'm not scared. I've got the engine open. Yeah, well, if you've got the engine open, I won't even try.
Beautiful. It was worth it to fall for it. Where there are no pieces on the board, you can still trap your pieces, right? This is just a beautiful variation indeed. Get it cheating.
Yeah. So this is a little disappointing for Wesley, and I think, and I'm a little bit surprised that the game ended so quickly, because again, I look at this position, I still see, rook e2 or rook f2, or even a move like, I don't know, queen g2 or queen b3. Any move that stops rook c2 looks like there's still some life in the game. But
I think, David, they both players are just like me with engine, so they know.
In other words, don't try.
They know there's no single way to try out, because there's always some way to get out from the difficulties. And when you know how many games have you been where you just think like, oh God, at least I know just the evaluation, not the move. What's my next move? Just the evaluation. Like, am I standing better? Am I worse? Should I make a draw? Should I try to win? And imagine they are sure that this is a draw. Of course, they will not try to find here some fireworks.
Some new weird move, because they know it can't actually be there. Well, I would like to see how either of them would win this position as white against one of us, one of the normal people, because I'm sure they could find a way.
Yeah, they will try and probably will succeed.
Yeah,
because
probably will
still
succeed.
It's not so understanding for me. I have to think longer, or just to take a glance on the other side of the screen what engine says. But these two players, they made a draw. This is not the first draw they made. This is not the last draw they will make, because they're gonna play a lot of more tournaments and events together against each other. And now we have first game ending in a draw. So definitely Hikaru is happier person now than Wesley, as Wesley really wanted to win this with white pieces. And Hikaru says, I'm gonna waste your white pieces here. I'm gonna make a draw and drag you to the tie breakers, or at least close to the tie breakers. What do you think about tomorrow's match with the color reverse?
So you may hate me for saying this, but I think there's a very good chance that you'll see me again on Monday for a tiebreaker, because I think Hikaru will be very happy to take the match to a tiebreaker. We saw how he played with white in the first game against Mamedyarov. I can remind everybody of it, because I've got it right here for anyone who's interested. This is Hikaru's opening with white in game one of a match against Mamedyarov, when he had not yet successfully drawn his game with black, but was just hoping to draw his game with black. And look at the opening that he played, the queen e2 trade queens variation of the Petrov. So I can imagine you're in for something like this tomorrow, Keti. I won't be here with you to see you cry or complain about it if this happens. But I think you'll get something like this, and then we'll get an exciting tiebreak match on Monday. Those were really thrilling yesterday. So although I'm a big fan of classical chess, I think we can still enjoy things on Monday one way or another. So that's what I expect.
I will not cry, I promise you, because I want to see this match all the way to the Armageddon. This is one-time opportunity. I want to take it. And as we have seen, this tiebreaks previous days, they were just amazing. And so why not to have more and more days of amazing chess? But that's it for today. It was sweet and short day. We learned a lot of ideas. We learned that there can be some complication, but if you work hard, if you analyze a lot of games that is happening alongside with your games, you can be very confident in these kind of positions too. And yeah, that's a very, very nice thing indeed. And also confidence is something that clearly shows when we have these two players. They're so confident in their each moves like F6. You cannot easily play, but they are sure with that move and they know it's just a good move and they are going for it. So, David, it's time to say already goodbye, and we will come back tomorrow with the same match, same people, different opening, and we hope for the best show tomorrow, and we hope also for the tie breaks. So, guys, thank you very much to join us on Twitch and also YouTube. Thank you, David, for joining me for today, and also whole Chesscom team to put the show together, and our producer Vic, who's running this. And final words goes to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to remind our extreme chess fans, I'm one of them. So for our extreme chess fans out there, there's the Rapid Chess Championships starting in an hour and 40 minutes or so on the chess channel. So you will still get to see some chess today, folks. There's always chess being played somewhere in the world at any time. You can find something to watch. Ding Liren's probably playing a classical game right now somewhere, even if he's asleep. He's just got to keep playing. So we can all keep watching. So take care, everybody, and have a great Saturday.
Bye.